I learned something. I hope I learned something. I hope I learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days.
Howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Kettle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat. Good day to you all. Chats are a little messed up today, but I don't care. I'm going to go ahead anyway. First off, very glad to have seen the great response we had yesterday during the live stream of the hearing in the Arizona Senate regarding the Maricopa County elections audit, 2020 election, of course. Some interesting stories came out of that. I should say facts, pardon me. Interesting facts came out of that. One that I'm covering today in the after show because I'd like to tell the truth about the election and not what YouTube makes me say. I'll just leave it at that. Also in the after show, we have some disturbing news from the border and a very horrific video of a school bus driver physically abusing a 10-year-old because he didn't like the way she was wearing her mask. And but this and much more here on All Hat No Kettle. But first, an RIP before we get into the main show, and that is for one of the great actors of all time, really probably in my top 5, honestly, and that's Charles Grodin. He died earlier of bone marrow cancer. He was 86. And folks, I'll tell you, the way the actuarial tables have been running as of late, obviously our longevity rate has dropped a few points over the last few years because of all of the opioid deaths. A tragedy to be sure, but if you do manage to avoid such things, your chances of dying of cancer before you die of old age increase exponentially as you get older and older. And obviously, 86 years old and be taken down by cancer shows a kind of incredible life longevity that Charles Grodin had. I wish he was still alive. Picasso Knows and I have loved him from the start. He had a small part in Rosemary's Baby. That was his breakthrough into movies. And then he starred opposite Sybil Shepherd in a movie called The Heartbreak Kid, and that really made his bones in Hollywood. But before that, he was a successful Broadway stage actor. He was did a number of plays. In 1975, he blew up in the production of Same Time Next Year. I hope you know that play/movie because it was made into a very good movie with Ellen Bernstein and Alan Alda playing the Charles Grodin part in the movie. But it's about a couple who have had an on-again, off-again romantic relationship since, I believe, college. And each year they meet at a little lakeside cottage in an out-of-the-way place. And they talk about their lives, how their marriages are going, how their kids are doing, and the relationship evolves over the years. They have good weekends, they have bad weekends. It's a beautiful story. It really is. Just kind of the wistful longing for times past and the fear of the future. It's a really brilliant piece of work. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know who wrote it. I should have looked that up. It just came to me right now. I can't credit the author, but very long-running Broadway play and an excellent movie. If you can find video of either, please avail yourselves of it. But I think Picasso Knows and I's favorite performance of Charles Grodin was in the anti-buddy movie, anti-buddy kind of cop buddy movie, Midnight Run. Charles Grodin plays the chief accountant for a big-time crime boss, and Robert De Niro, back when he was a person, played a ex-cop who was now a private detective who was trying to track down this mob boss because that guy was responsible for De Niro being framed and kicked off the force. And so De Niro was trying to take him down and clear his name. And he's able to track down Charles Grodin, and they embark on this cross-country trip in order to get Grodin into court to testify. And it's hilarious because they're getting... I'll just give a little bit of it away. De Niro grabs Grodin, finds him, grabs him, takes him to the airport to fly from New York to California, or was it the other way around? It doesn't matter. They're going to fly cross country. And they get on the airplane, and Charles Grodin starts rocking and saying over and over again, "These things go down, these things go down." And the flight crew forces them off the plane. So now they've got to get across country in not very long period of time at all. And there is a train ride. There is actually a plane ride in a Stearman crop duster. I won't tell you how that gets off the ground. That's a funny story in and of itself. But the greatest line in the movie is Grodin and De Niro are in the back of a truck hauling chickens, getting from one place to the other. They hitch a ride with chickens. And as they're talking later, they grew a little closer and a little closer as time went on, but not by much, because De Niro hated Grodin for what he did. But they're talking, and there's a bit of a pause, and then Grodin says to De Niro, "Some of those chickens look pretty good." Beautiful throwaway line. It made the movie, in my opinion. But Grodin was also in Catch-22, the movie made of one of my favorite books of all time, written by Joseph Heller. By the way, Heller wrote a second novel after Catch-22, decades after. Wasn't all that good. It was called Good as Gold. I read it before my freshman year in college. I did impress the hell out of my English professor that I'd read it. He did stand me out for that. And Lizard Bites does mention Wheatmouth 817 mentions in the D-Live chat that Lizard Bites did in fact show Midnight Run a couple weeks ago on his movie night per Picasso Knows' recommendation. So that's his That's very good, Steely Dan. I'd reference it, but the context is gone. But that's very good. That's very good. But it's Charles Grodin's just a real gem from Broadway and Hollywood, and he will be missed. He will sorely be missed. You do need to read this article in the New York Post, though. There's a great line from him regarding when he worked with Michael J. Fox during Michael J. Fox's last show, aptly titled The Michael J. Fox Show. There's a beautiful joke that Grodin pulled on Fox while they were walking off the set one day. I'm not going to give it away. You really need the article. It's on the New York Post, NewYorkPost.com. All right, let's get along with the show. I've spent a lot of time on Charles Grodin, and he deserved it. First off, as always, we will start with our Babylon Bee bookend. This is the one on the left. From their politics section, reporter stuck to Biden's grill, asks follow-up question. And here we have a picture of a young millennial type Washington D.C. correspondent stuck to the front of a Ford Lightning electric pickup truck as Biden gleefully drives willy-nilly across the tarmac. Dateline, Dearborn, Michigan. During a recent appearance at a Ford plant in Michigan, Biden test drove a new Ford F-150 Lightning as pesky reporters tried to ask him about the escalating crisis in the Middle East. Quoting the reporter, "Excuse me, sir, President Biden, sir. Wow, you're looking so spiffy today. You mind if I ask you a question about Israel and Palestine?" "Who said that?" said a startled Biden. "Was that a real voice or just one of my head voices?" "Oh, hey, you're real. Okay. No, you can't ask a question about the Middle East, you two-faced trout stomper. I don't work for you. You want me to run you over?" Biden then pressed on the accelerator and plowed right into the journalist, who got stuck on the grill as the president continued to speed up. Said the stuck journalist, "Are you planning on speaking to Netanyahu about a ceasefire?" An enraged Biden yelled out the window, "Netanyahu? Who's that? What games are you trying to pull here, you stupid journalist?" Biden then slammed on the brakes, sending the journalist flying across the tarmac. The other journalist then clapped and cheered at what a cool guy and good driver Biden was. Jen Psaki then passed out cookies. The Babylon Bee folks leading us off. And now the newly closed market for today. And folks, it was a bloodbath, except for gold, which did retreat from a decent high earlier. But let's get into it. First of all, the Dow Jones was down almost a full half point today, settling nicely below the 34,000 mark. And the S&P 500 is just a little bit over 4,000. It was down almost 0.3%. The NASDAQ was only barely down, finishing just under $4 per share loss. But gold was the big winner, the only winner, really, up 0.11%, or just a little over $2 an ounce. At one point, gold was up over 1,800 an ounce at, what's the peak here again? 1888 and change. But there was a sharp slide and then a bit of a recovery at the end there. But the big loser, of course, over the past few weeks has been Bitcoin. As I conveyed to you yesterday, China has banned cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin took it right in the teeth. You can see here, though, it could have been worse today. At one point, Bitcoin dropped all the way down to, let me get it here, below, right around 33,000. I can't get the exact mark there, but right around 33,000. It did finish up over that, closing at just under 40,000. But I know people who used their last Biden bucks that came out to buy Bitcoin. And at that time, as they conveyed it to me, it was around 57,000, 58,000, somewhere in there when they bought. And not too long after, it went all the way up to 63, and things were looking good. But then if you look at this 1 month chart for Bitcoin, you can see after it charged up there, even hovering around 60,000 just a few weeks ago, it has been a very sharp sell-off ever since. You remember Elon Musk made it sound like he was selling Tesla's $1.5 billion stake in Bitcoin. He has since walked that back, but the damage was done, and that with China, there is a big deal. But I was reading some things from Seeking Alpha today in preparation for the show, and they're saying that as much as Bitcoin has dropped, Ethereum and other alternate cryptos have really dropped. I guess Ethereum at one point had dropped a full 50%. And Doge is now down from its high of 63 to around, I think, 23 cents. Now, of course, I mean, it used to sell for less than a penny. So you could be very rich many times over if you bought a lot of a meme back in the day. But that is another thing. Electric Dog says in the chat, I just bought a replacement toilet flapper and valve and tube and had no other option at Home Depot than to buy the one made in China. Yes, unfortunately, that is the case. I do know someone, by the way, a good friend of the family's, who works in a factory not too far from here that makes those exact things. It's a union shop, and if you knew the kind of, no pun intended, crap that they pull regarding production quotas and things like that, it would make you sour on any type of union labor, at least when it comes to making toilet accessories. It's all I could stop myself from hitting her when she describes the way they screw around with their production quotas and things like that. It's just sad, really sad. Moving right along. So another thing pulling down the economy is this new idea that companies have to be woke or they're not going to be able to capitalize. And I've got an article here from the Epoch Times written by Peter Schwab, and it discusses how places like the International Monetary Fund, BlackRock, which is the largest capital group in the world, and others are talking about making a system where if you don't have the right points on the sustainability market or the sustainability graph, meaning such things as corporate board diversity, carbon footprint, things like that, if you don't meet the woke criteria, you won't have access to capital the way companies who do will be allowed to. It is complete corporatization of the Great Reset. And if you're not familiar, the Great Reset is basically that there will be no more private property. You will rent everything you have and you will love it. That is a direct quote. Actually, I believe it goes, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Something like that. But again, completely taking the world off fossil fuels, reworking all governance to be, critical race theory compliant, things like that. And so they're talking about creating basically a two-tier economy. There's no other way to put it. There's a lot to this article. I can't read it all. I really wish I could. I highly recommend you check it out. But let me get to a quote here. This is a quote from Peter Klein, who is a professor of research and economics at Baylor University. I've got my notes here. He's also part of a libertarian think tank. That's how it's described. A libertarian think tank called Mies Institute, M-I-S-E, Mies Institute. And this is a quote from Peter Klein, just describing corporations. I'll start with this. The institution of a corporation itself is a product of government bestowing, and quoting Klein, certain benefits and protections on corporations. And then here's the full quote. If meaning corporations, they were solely creatures of the economy, then I would agree that we should leave them alone. But again, these are created with the assistance of the government power, and now they're being used to impose political agendas on American citizens. That's very troubling. He also noted that, and again I'm quoting, this is the very type of unaccountable authoritarianism that the left used to always be concerned about. And there's also a quote from another researcher whose name I don't have here. His last name's Taylor, but I'll read you the quote. When you have a wealthy economy, then you're able to afford to have policies that are very, very helpful for the environment. And this person points out that over the past 40 years, America has cut air and water pollution by more than half. We know that from the Trump administration, how much we cut carbon emissions by switching many coal plants and oil plants, power plants, over to natural gas. Because we basically made natural gas as cheap as water through fracking, which, of course, this administration is trying to stop at all costs. So another thing going on with the administration is the inflation and creating a new class of government dependents. I've talked about this before, and this article mentions in pretty good detail. It's from Town Hall, by the way, by Rick Manning, a very good piece from earlier today. And it's about the new cash payments that Biden's sending out to families with children. You'll remember, per month, you're going to get $300 per child under 6 and $250 between for children between 7 and 18. So we've already got inflation just surging right now. The Fed says it's temporary. Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, says it's temporary, but there's no sign of it slowing down. The government is still pumping literally trillions of dollars into the economy, and there isn't enough manufactured goods to suck up that money. So we're increasing the money supply while we don't have enough goods to counteract that extra cash. That is how you create inflation. Too much money, too little product. That is the recipe for inflation. Add to that the job numbers that have actually gone down vis-a-vis employment from March to April. And you have, I should say, in the last week, and you have stagflation, which is what made Jimmy Carter famous. That's when jobs are either flat or decreasing and inflation is rising. So it's a vicious cycle. More and more people are out of work, less goods are being produced. There's more money in the economy that's not being used. Boom, everything goes to hell. So by creating a whole new class of dependents, by the way, according to this administration themselves, not anyone else, this administration, 88% of American households are eligible for these extra payments. Do you think for a second that 88% of American households need extra money for their kids after the great benefits that Trump gave them through the Tax Cut and Jobs Act? No. So what we're doing is paying people to stay out of the workforce and to have children. Well, we're already doing that with welfare. That is what welfare is. Have kids, don't work. And by the way, don't get married or you'll lose part of your benefits. That's welfare. He's creating an entirely new welfare state way over and above those who are at or under the poverty line. Now we're talking basically the top 88% of the country getting this money. I mean, I'm sure the top 20% of this country, aside from a few at the very top, getting money that they don't need. And what happens is you start getting that money, you have less incentive to work, and you figure out ways to make that money your primary source of income. And you lose the drive to work. And another thing, if you do decide ultimately to get back into the workforce, all this time you've been off sucking up this government money, your job skills have decreased. So unless you were taking classes, say at your local community college, where's Jill Biden when you need her? Sorry, Dr. Jill Biden. Your skills are falling off. Now, I think it's great if this allows families to homeschool. That would be great. But how many are going to avail themselves of that? Not very many. Homeschooling is still gaining in popularity, but it's not that popular that we needed to create a whole new payment structure for it. If you want to subsidize homeschooling, then just not make people pay taxes for the school district when they don't send their kids to those schools. That would be the best way to plan that. But that's the exact opposite of what this administration is doing. And it is just going to lead us to a worse and worse situation when it comes to family cohesion and job market participation. There's no other way around it. I had that twice. Interesting. All right. Good news. Good news. I try to give you a little good news with the bad news. And that is Nicole Hannah-Jones, the great creator of the 1619 Project, which she now calls more of a narrative than a history, although she billed it as academically rigorous history. You know, the fact that, according to her, the United States was founded in 1619 when the first slaves landed on our shores. A couple things about that, in case you haven't been paying attention. One, that slave ship was not bringing slaves that any American colonists had asked for. It was a privateer that had captured a slave ship and diverted the cargo to America. Second of all, those people were made indentured servants, not slaves. You can argue the difference between indentured servitude and slavery all you want. Here's the thing, though. At the end of, I believe it was 2 years, all of those quote-unquote slaves were let go and became free people in the colonies. They were not permanent slaves. Again, you can argue against indentured servitude if you care to, but they were not made slaves. They were given their freedom after a couple of years. So that part of the narrative falls flat as well. It seems, though, interestingly enough, Nikole Hannah-Jones was up for tenure at a very prestigious part of University of North Carolina in their journalism department. Thank you, Doug. They're Hussman School of Journalism, and they're also she was also angling to get the Media Knight Chair in Race and Investigative Journalism. Now, this position has often gone to journalists, and UNC's idea behind this chair is that you can teach at the university part-time and you can perform journalism part-time. Well, Nikole Hannah-Jones hasn't performed journalism since I don't know when. She became a screeching left-wing advocate years ago. Whatever journalistic credentials she had have long since been shredded and are now lining the bottom of a parakeet cage somewhere in the Bronx. But she was angling for tenure, and it looked like she was going to get it. But at the very last minute, the board, the UNC board, put the brakes on it. They backed off from tenure, gave her a 5-year extension on her current position with another look at tenure at the end of that time. And from this article that I read from the Post Millennial by Hannah Nightingale, whom I adore, by the way, she's great. This article states that it seems that there was a great deal of pressure from conservatives who are big backers of UNC. They have pull on the board, and it actually got to the point where there is a proposal in front of the board that any teaching slots at the professor level at UNC have to go through the board. They cannot just be picked by the school, whatever journalism school, chemistry, whatever. It has to go through the board. So this is a direct rebuke to Nikole Hannah-Jones. And of course, the liberals at UNC are spitting nails. They say it's racist. They say it was based on faulty information. Yada yada yada. Well, the truth is, Nikole Hannah-Jones didn't get tenure at UNC. She didn't deserve it, and the fact that she got a 5-year extension is basically a sop. In 5 years, she will be completely irrelevant, and she will go away, not quietly, but she will go away. So good news there. Bad news in California, unfortunately. You may have heard about the Palisades fire that sprang up quite recently, burned over 1,100 acres, and it turns out, with like the vast majority of wildfires across the world, this was arson. Now, California does have a problem with such things as old, non-insulated non-maintained high-tension lines that fall off their towers and create sparks and light underbrush that hasn't been cleared in decades. You remember Trump called them out on that, and he was called a climate science denier for stating the obvious fact that forest management saves from forest fires. But of course, if Trump says it, then you have to go with the exact opposite. If Trump creates peace in the Middle East, you have to do all you can to destroy. Oh wait, they did already. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. That comes later in this block. But turns out there was a homeless man roaming around setting fires. Now, he was spotted by helicopters actively setting several fires. They tracked him, and a private security officer marking one edge of the fire that was near homes where everyone had been evacuated. There was a private officer there guarding the property. and he saw the guy come stumbling out of the fire zone, held him. Cops showed up. They arrested the guy. Interestingly enough, he had to be treated for smoke inhalation. Kind of caught himself inside the fire for a little bit. Had to somehow find a way out. I'm sure if it hadn't been for the firefighters, the guy would have been burned to a crisp. But he set at least 3 fires in that area. Now, let me tangentially for just a second. You remember, was it 2 years ago, the huge ravaging fires that were sweeping all over Victoria, Australia, Queensland, areas like that. Massive fires, just razing whole neighborhoods. 90+% of all fires in Australia are arson or unattended campfires. Over 90%. Very, very few are caused by environmental action such as lightning strikes. This is a fact of life. But if you don't maintain your forest, or if you're in the middle of a drought, like Australia was and like California is right now, this is going to happen. At least they caught the guy. But still, right now the fire's not even 50% contained. And it's threatening a lot of homes. Again, good news. Utah. Again, with the state block, I try to give you the good with the bad. And Utah is doing a couple really good things right now. Their legislative session ended a few weeks ago, but the House Speaker has created a special legislative session. He sent out a letter getting everybody to come back to the State House to work on a couple pieces of legislation. 2 big important pieces of legislation. One, making Utah a Second Amendment sanctuary state. That's been gaining in popularity all over the country. You remember there was a county in Illinois some years ago that became the first sanctuary state against gun laws, restrictive gun laws. And then Virginia, it swept every red county in Virginia, is now a sanctuary for Second Amendment rights. Other states have been doing the same, other county sheriffs, things like that. Well, Utah is going for the whole state. Boom, we're doing it. Also, though, they're going to put big pressure on the Utah State Board of Education to ban critical race theory from the public schools. So another state taking the lead and cutting off this administration at the pass. The only way states can hope to stave off the kind of incredibly creeping statism that the Democrats want to impose on the country is by creating these sanctuary laws. And if the federal government wants to say, hey, you can't do that, federal statutes override state statutes, fine. You go ahead and enforce immigration law in Los Angeles. Then you can come to us about our Second Amendment sanctuary state. You first. They started it, folks. Anyone who says the red states want to secede, the red states want to make their own rules, yeah, we do. Because the blue states showed the way. Trump, remember, tried to cut off federal funding to sanctuary states and sanctuary cities, and he got blocked by every court in the country. Turnabout's fair play, folks. I'd like to quote Melanie Atwood in the Trovo chat. I'm from Michigan, and I have some friends from California and surrounding states. Every time there's a fire, they ask why there isn't a pipeline from the Great Lakes to bring water to places with frequent fires. Melanie, have you told them that maybe if they stopped diverting all of those millions of gallons of fresh water into the San Francisco Bay? I'm looking at your chat, not you. I'm sorry. I always do that. Millions of gallons of water into San Francisco Bay to save the smelt, the Pacific smelt, that maybe if they stopped doing that, they'd have enough water to make agriculture a thing again and fight fires? Maybe not saving a bunch of itty-bitty fish from brackish water could be a little more important than trying to keep very, very expensive homes in very beautiful country from burning into ash. I don't know. I'm just saying. Yeah, Melanie replies, I have. They don't have much of a response. Excellent. Thank you so much. By the way, welcome to Trovo. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the show. And you may know, if you saw the teaser, I should say the placeholder for Trovo, we'll be here every day, every Monday through Friday, unless I'm sick, which unfortunately happens every so often, but 4 p.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern. Trovo and DLive get the whole show. YouTube only gets half the show because YouTube's YouTube, and they've already demonetized me, so why should I give them any more than I absolutely have to? I do want to say, though, to the folks on YouTube, again, those of you who found us yesterday during the Arizona election audit live stream, I can't thank you enough for showing up. I can't thank you enough for showing up. I wish I could give you the whole show as a thank you. I picked up a number of new subscribers. I'm very happy for that. The reaction I got was great, and I promise any more of these things pop up, I'll do my best to bring them to you. I wish I could do them more often because it was the most fun I have had on YouTube literally in years. Honestly, in years, it's the most fun I've ever had. Great time, and so I want to thank you again, YouTube, for showing up. That really meant a lot to me, and I know the channel got a lot out of it too. Leptic Dog makes a interesting point in the D-Live chat. It would be unconscionable to send Great Lakes water over the Continental Divide. I agree completely. He also says punishable by death, in my opinion. All right, so good. Let's hear it for Utah. Oh, it's very kind of you, Melanie. Very kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. By the way, in case you or anyone else you know cares to, I live stream PC games every morning, even on the weekends, sometimes in the afternoons on weekends too. I'm currently playing The Witcher 3, and I had a great suggestion from someone a few days ago. After I finish that, I'm probably going to start playing some of the more recent entries in the Far Cry series. So go from swords and sorcery to modern vehicles and modern firearms. Let's see what we can do. Moving right along. And Comfrey friend, so nice to see you. It's been a while. Nice to see you. All right. Lori Lightfoot, also known in some circles as Beetlejuice. I didn't make it up. Turns out she's got a very interesting way of handling one-on-one interviews with reporters. She's more than happy to do it as long as you're not white or Asian. As long as you don't fall into either of those two categories, she's be more than happy to see if she can fit you in for a one-on-one interview. Folks, I'm not making this up. Let me quote a tweet from Mary Ann Ahern. I know of Mary Ann Ahern. I live near Chicago. I've lived near Chicago more in my life than I've lived, and I've lived all over the Central Time Zone. But so I do know from reputation a lot of the reporters in the Chicago area, and Mary Ann Ahern is one of them. And she tweeted out the following: as the Chicago mayor reaches her 2-year midway point, her spokeswoman says Lightfoot is granting one-on-one interviews only to black or brown journalists. And there was another tweet from Chicago PBS news anchor Paris Schultz, and the tweet read, I was told the same thing. So then there was a tweet by one George Cardenas, and George said, how is that even true? Be serious. And Chicago PBS political reporter Heather Chirone, I don't know if it's Chirone or Chirone, please forgive me, but she confirms to the alderman, I can confirm. Folks, I don't know how many laws that violates. That is direct, incontrovertible racism. And according to the Civil Rights Act, as I remember, the one that Democrats filibustered, by the way, wouldn't have passed without Republican support, but according to the Civil Rights Act, you can't discriminate on the basis of race, creed, or color. And that's exactly what Lightfoot is doing. Exactly. And it's not just one lone reporter from the Chicago Reader, which used to be a great paper, saying that. We're talking mainstream journalists from major networks. So I don't know what kind of repercussions Lightfoot's going to face from this. I mean, she's checked all the boxes. She's a woman, she's black, and she's a lesbian. So you can't beat her on the oppression stack, unless you're a trans double amputee First Nation. That'd be the only way to beat her on the oppression stack. And I don't see any of those running for Chicago mayor anytime soon. But this is a thing, you guys. This is absolutely a thing. And if Lightfoot's doing it in the open, imagine how many other people in her position are doing the exact same thing, just not letting it out. She does sound super racist, Comfy Friend. Yes, absolutely. Comfy Friend also says in the Trovo chat, I wouldn't allow an interview by anyone in the mainstream media, but that's just because they're vindictive. I would take that on a slightly different tack on that, Comfy Friend. I would sit down for an interview, but I would tape the whole thing. I would make sure I had camera and microphone on me the whole time. And then if they tried to edit anything out of context, like Trump did not too long ago with the 60 Minutes interview, just release the whole thing. Blow off the NDA, release the whole thing, and then make them look like idiots. That's my way of doing it. Not that. And German winters aren't exactly temperate. Ask the guys who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. They had used hand grenades to try to dig foxholes to hide from the German artillery because the ground was so hard they couldn't dig. And if you were exposed to that German artillery, you had a lot of problems. In fact, a lot of the times, the artillery would hit the trees because they were in dense forest in certain areas, and the splinters would come raining down and impale you. That's another story. Now, you may also remember that very early in this administration, Biden waived the locks on the grid that Trump had put on against China and Russia. He had blocked China and Russia from having any influence over our energy grid, electrical, uranium, etc. And Biden waived those almost immediately. So I can't explain it. I'm sorry, I can't explain it. Except if Trump did it, we have to do the opposite. Again, if there's peace in the Middle East, we have to do the opposite. Otherwise, people will think we're like Trump. Electric Dog puts in the chat, Russia is waging war against Ukraine as I type this. Are you saying it's a hot war right now, or just the way it's been going? Because I know it's certainly been touch and go, although Russia did pull back most of those troops recently. Okay, so as I just talked about, let's move from that part of our policy to what's going on between us, Israel, and the quote-unquote Palestinian state. I say quote-unquote because there's no such thing as Palestine. It's a made-up thing. This is the Gaza Strip, populated by Arabs, run by Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, both terrorist organizations. And Hamas has the expressed written policy, it's on their charter, of wiping Israel and all Jews off the face of the earth. That is their mission. And I've got a story coming up near the end of, or at the end, I should say, of this block that will show you just how dedicated they are to doing all they can to make Israel a pariah. You will not believe it when I get to it. Anyway, one of the great anti-Semites of all time is Rashida Tlaib. You know, she has family in quote-unquote Palestine, but she saw fit to come here and ruin our country instead of staying there and helping to keep Palestine under the boot of terrorists. And she's doing all she can to poison any relations we have with Israel and also drive anti-Jewish sentiment in the United States as much as she can. She's right up there with Ilhan Omar, another refugee. They pay back America, giving them the greatest lives they've ever had by trying to destroy it. So you got this picture here. This is an archived article from the New York Times. Always go to archive.today. If you see a story with a link to any mainstream media source, copy the link. Don't click on it. Right-click, select copy link, go to archive.today. There will be a URL tab. Just paste it in there. You'll have to answer a CAPTCHA question. I should say just check the box. You don't have to do fire hydrants or anything like that. Just check the box that says, I'm not a robot. Sometimes it takes a little while. You could be back in the queue or people looking for the story if it's a popular story. But sooner or later, it'll pop up. It takes away banner ads, all that kind of great stuff. And you don't give them the traffic. I learned this from 6X and Hammer 666, and it's worked great for me. But as you can see here, this is Rashida Tlaib on the left. And this is on the tarmac in Michigan as they're getting ready to go to the Ford plant for Biden to announce his big tax break and other giveaways to the electric vehicle industry. Still hasn't said how he's going to power the grid to charge all of these electric cars with no fossil fuels. Because remember, there still isn't any technology breakthroughs out there that would enable us to change from fossil fuel to quote-unquote renewable sources at anywhere near the levels that we would require if this country went full electric, unless you built nuclear plants. That's all there is to it. You either build nuclear or you use fossil fuels. Because there's no way you can put enough wind and solar on federal land to run this country's electrical grid. But that's not where we're at right now. We're talking about Israel. And Rashida Tlaib, as you've seen in recent days, has put out a bunch of tweets saying that Israel is conducting genocide against the Palestinians. And as Thomas Sowell once famously pointed out, the left always starts the argument in the middle. So Tlaib is pointing out the airstrikes that Israel is conducting in Gaza, sometimes in residential districts, sometimes not. They're going after rocket launchers, Hezbollah headquarters, intelligence agencies, things like that. And Hezbollah loves to hide these things in civilian neighborhoods, in hospitals, in schools. I've got some chilling video of that coming up. But so that is happening. I will not deny it. Palestinians are dying. More are dying from rockets falling short of Israel than from Israeli airstrikes, but that's a stat that gets lost in the news. But Tlaib is right. Israel is bombing Gaza. Yes, that is happening. What Tlaib fails to mention is that Israel started doing that because Gaza sent over, and now some are coming from Lebanon, by the way. That happened today. Some are coming from Lebanon. But according to stats that I've seen, some 3,750 rockets have been fired from outside of Israel into residential areas in Israel over the last 10 days. Almost 4,000 rockets. And the Iron Dome, Israel's anti-missile system, is only 90% effective. But Tlaib can't be bothered to do that math. She's only concerned about what's happening in response and will not even characterize it as a defensive response. Instead, it's terrorism. So Biden approved a $783 million sale of high-tech arms to Israel yesterday. It was, I believe part of it was replacements for the ordnance they've used for the Iron Dome missile system. And Tlaib lost it. Absolutely lost it. So did Omar. So did AOC. Bernie Sanders, too. Lost it. So Tlaib was with Biden today because the Ford plant is in her district. Again, she's a Democrat rep from Michigan. And she's with Debbie Dingell, who's also a rep from Michigan. And you can see in this picture, Tlaib is up in Biden's grill. They're making physical contact. With Debbie Dingell and Tlaib are touching. And Biden's got his hand up. He's obviously being defensive. I can read a little body language, and Biden's being defensive right now. So she's reading him the riot act before they appear together at the Ford plant. This has been reported by people who were right there at the time. Overheard the conversation. And they said that Tlaib basically repeated her boycott divest sanction from the river to the sea speech that she gave on the House floor just a few days ago. So what's Biden's reaction to that? He says the following, referring to Rashida Tlaib, who was in the audience as he made this speech in front of the Ford vehicles. Quote, I admire your intellect, I admire your passion, and I admire your concern for so many other people. By the way, he kept calling her Rashid. Just so you know, kept calling her Rashid. And then he concluded, from my heart, I pray that your grandmom and family are well. I promise you I'll do everything to see that they are. Commander-in-Chief, everyone. By the way, just in case you care, Politico ran an article recently about how much the Democrat Party has been behind Israel for all these decades, except they basically never have been. Carter was infamously anti-Israel. He was big friends with Yasser Arafat even after he left office. In fact, he and Arafat got closer over the years. Rosalind Carter was also right there with him. Big Arafat fan, totally anti-Israel. The Obama administration leaked very sensitive and very damaging intelligence reports about Israeli military operations against Iran and Syria 4 or 5 times, directly undercutting Israeli military preparedness and operations, because they wanted Iran to see U.S. as the good guy and to see Israel as the bad guy who's not negotiating in good faith. Do you know that in 2005, up to that point, Israel did occupy Gaza? And then they gave it away. There were Israeli families with property, with homes in Gaza, and they kicked them all out, made them come back to Israel, left behind all the infrastructure that they had put together, gave it over to the Arabs. Hamas took over, Palestinian Authority took over, and they razed every bit of infrastructure the Israelis had built. Greenhouses, gardens, pipelines, destroyed. Just like this administration and Trump. No matter how good it is, no matter how much it helps, if the other guy did it, it has to be destroyed. Dog says, I can't pronounce it, Dog. I'm reading how it says there, but I just can't read it. I'll never be, Laib. Oh, I see what you're saying, Laib. No T. Okay. Rashida Laib. All right. Nah, screw her. It's going to be Tlaib for me. Just like Mark Levin always pronounces it Pisaki. So screw it. Melanie Atwood says, it's sad that if you want to be even remotely moral in any kind of conflict today, the odds are so heavily stacked against you that you almost cannot win. That's perfectly put. That's absolutely perfectly put, Melanie. I couldn't have said it better. Just to take it further, though, that's because the left now believes that anything that happens bad is a result of oppression. It can't be due to any actions or people who are your proxy, anything they have done to create that situation. You can only be in that position because someone in a, quote, position of power over you has oppressed you. For example, anyone who's rich in America only got there on the backs of the poor people. Obama said, concerning businesses, you didn't build that. It's a direct quote to the American business community. He said, you didn't build that. You have to rely on the government for roads and infrastructure. You had nothing to do with your success. And the left has just taken it a step further now. Anything good happens because of oppression, unless it happens for the oppressed people. And the only way they can be unoppressed is to take the ruling class and to tear it down. Not lift the others up through things like education and better family structure, things like that. Not voting for Democrats every year and watching your communities crumble. But instead, you just have to take down the oppressor, and that'll make things better. All right, we're We're going to go long on YouTube, folks. You guys get a little extra today. So, speaking of Biden's reaction to this whole thing, Biden talked to Bibi Netanyahu not too long ago. Article here from justthenews.com, written by Joseph Weber, one of their best writers. This came out just this morning. And Biden called Benjamin Netanyahu, also known as Bibi, and called for a significant de-escalation between Israel and Palestine. That's a direct quote, significant de-escalation. That's according to a White House statement. What the hell does he mean by that? Israel didn't start the rockets flying, Joe. And the rockets haven't stopped flying. And there's no guarantee that Israel's going to be able to hit every missile launcher between now and when the Hamas finally decides they're going to pull back. There's every possibility there's going to be another ground war if Israel doesn't believe they've cut Hamas off at the neck and can ensure their country's safety for at least a decent period of time. I don't want that. I don't want that at all. And Israel doesn't want that either. Nobody wants a ground war. People die. Innocent people die. But a significant de-escalation? What does that even mean? Stop defending yourself? So that's significant there. That's significant in its own right. Okay, now I do have some good news regarding what's going on here. This is a graph of the rockets launched since May 13th. This is a stretch from May 13th through today. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, that's the rockets per hour. And then rockets total here in the middle, you can see the bottom there. Oops, I can't highlight it. Sorry, it's an image. 3,750 as of 7 o'clock Israeli time this morning. This is according to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. If you look at the far right here, you can see rockets per hour. When it started off, it was 13 plus rockets an hour. But last weekend, it was between 22 and 25 rockets an hour between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Saturday morning to Sunday night. That was the height. But as of this morning, 7 a.m. Israeli time, it's tied for its lowest, which was just over 4 per hour. That was also the same on Monday. But between those two, they're between 14.5 and 16.5 an hour. So it could just be a pause. We don't know yet. But there has been a significant reduction, at least over the past 3 days. Now, this is what I teased a second ago, and this is absolutely bone-chilling. You may or may not know, Israel has been doing all it can to obviate civilian casualties. One of the things that they do is they drop something called a knock bomb when they're about to bomb a building. If they can't get through to the residents, they drop a knock bomb, and what that does is it's a concussion bomb, not an explosive bomb. And it creates a concussive effect throughout the building, and it shakes it, just like a giant kicks it. But nothing is damaged. But it tells everybody this building is going to be attacked by the Israeli Air Force. And thank you, Thunderbird SXM, for following. But we're going to be attacked by the Israeli forces. Get out. And that gives people plenty of time to flee. Yes, they're going to lose their homes, but if Hamas wasn't using it as a terrorist base, they wouldn't have to worry about it. And then the place gets destroyed. Well, they also call. They physically call on the phone people in the building. Israel has numbers for the building managers, all this stuff. They have great intelligence. And they also have phone books, believe it or not. Israel has phone books. And so they call the building managers and other occupants, and they say, look, you got to get out of there because we're going to bomb this building. And sometimes people leave. But then you get a call like this. This is between an IDF military officer, or I shouldn't say officer, a member of the IDF, and a Gazan who is in a building that the IDF is planning to bomb. It's in Arabic. I can't. I'll have to read the captions for you, so pardon me for pausing it every so often. But this is absolutely chilling what you're about to hear. Listen to this. So again, this is an IDF phone call to a Gazan to evacuate a building with civilians. Evacuate a building with civilians before it's bombed.
يا حبيبي انا بقدرش اطلع كل الناس هذول انا بدي اقل شيء ساعتين عبال ما كلهم يطلعوا
يا اخوي لو ما.
Okay, so the Gazan starts out, I can't get all the people out. I need at least 2 hours to get them out. That's stalling. That's flat out stalling. It doesn't take 2 hours to evacuate a building. And the IDF says in response, listen, we're going to bomb the building. It continues from here.
لو ما بتطلع انا بطوح.
انت طخ اللي بدك اياه سويه اللي بتنزل الارض وتتلقاه.
لا اخوي لازم الواحد لازم يعمل كل شيء من شان.
So the Gazan says, you want to bomb? Bomb whatever you want. And the Israeli says, no, brother, we need to do everything we can so you don't die. Again, this is the side committing genocide, folks. They're calling people saying, get out. It goes on further. You haven't heard the half of it yet.
ما تموت. عندك مسؤولية على الأطفال.
The Gazan says, we want to die. And the Israeli says, but you have a responsibility for children's lives. And then the Arab says, the Gazan, whichever, says, if the children need to die, then they'll die. Now, this is from Sky News. This is not some ultra-right-wing Israeli Orthodox outlet. This is from Sky News, okay? So I'll read that again. From the Gazan, if the children need to die, then they'll die. And the Israeli responds, God forbid, what do you want to die?
لا سمح الله بدك تستشهد
عشان تبين بشاعتك.
And the Gazan replies, this is how we reveal your cruelty. This is how we reveal your cruelty. We're going to allow children to die to prove that you're cruel. Can you imagine trying to bargain in a peaceful manner with people who think this way? There is no give and take between quote-unquote Palestine and the Israeli state. This is Hamas brainwashing these people. This is how they think. We're going to let children die because this is how we reveal your cruelty, Israeli cruelty. That is not the mind of a rational person. That is the mind of an ideologue. And you can't talk down ideologues. This is why the Trump peace plan was so effective. Cut out the Palestinians. Because they're not arguing or negotiating in good faith. They never have and they never will. Every time Israel has given something up to Gaza, to the Palestinians, to the PLO, whatever, in turn, they were shat on and attacked. Every single time. This is the mentality they're dealing with. These are the people that Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and AOC and Bernie Sanders hold up as oppressors. The oppressed. The people who are victims of the Israeli apartheid state. Israel doesn't inhabit Gaza anymore. They haven't since 2005. There are Arab Israelis who, up until 10 days ago, coexisted quite peacefully with Israeli Jews. And then Lod went up in flames. And an event labeled a 3-night crystal knock by the mayor of Lod erupted. And Israeli Arabs, I do not mean that, Israeli Arabs went on a rampage, burning down synagogues, burning down people's homes, attacking people in the street. Now, right-wing Jewish organizations stepped up their game and started attacking people they thought were Palestinians. It wasn't, just one side doing all of this. There were ultra-Orthodox or ultra-conservative Israeli groups targeting Arabs, Israeli Arabs. But that was a reaction. Shouldn't have happened, but it was a reaction. I don't promote any kind of violence. But you can't bargain with this. You can't bargain with this. All right, YouTube, we have reached the end of the day. I gave you quite a bit extra today. I hope you appreciated it. And again, thank you so much for being here. I couldn't have had more fun yesterday. Now we are moving on to the after show on DLive and Trovo. They get the full show because YouTube, of course, is quite censorious, and there are certain things. I may even have said enough today to get the channel pulled. I don't know. I kind of went off on things today. We'll have to see. If you don't see me here tomorrow, you'll know why. Now, there is no show Friday. I'm having jaw surgery. I'm having implants put in. So no YouTube, no Trovo, no DLive Friday, morning or afternoon, no game stream. Hopefully I'll be back for the game streams Saturday morning starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, as long as I'm not in too much pain. But YouTube, I will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. Thanks again. Bye-bye.